Perak Azav, DAF IN, sponsored Refuah Shalema for Devorah Bas Chaya Rivka. The Gemara begins discussing the law of the previous Mishnah. According to the Rabbanan, the buyer can retract within the time it takes to show the bought item to a third party. Rav Nachman explains this law applies only to the buyer, but the seller can always retract. Since he no longer possesses the item, he cannot show it to a third party. He can claim he did not know that he undersold. The proof is from the Mishnah. The merchants of Lud returned to the system of the Rabbanan. It must be that Rabbi Tarfon's extended time to retract to protect them from price fraud did not matter to them because they were not subject to a time limit. The Gemara rejects this proof. The reason they preferred the system of the Rabbanan was because they were professional salesmen and generally were not defrauded. However, Rabbi Tarfon's extended time was to their detriment because it gave buyers more time to retract or demand a refund. The next law the Gemara discusses is a qualification of the rights of the buyer to demand a refund for overcharging. The Gemara distinguishes between buying from a merchant and a householder. A householder is not in the business of selling. He is attached to his merchandise. He will only sell under pressure for a higher price unless it is an insignificant item that he would only have to sell. The buyer knows this, therefore he cannot demand a refund. We continue with the Mishnah. The Mishnah mentions three laws. Number one, there is defrauding of the buyer and seller. The Gemara brings a pasuk that mentions lo sonu, both in relation to the buyer and seller. The Gemara explains, without the verse, we could assume the law applies only to the merchant who is familiar with the price of merchandise, or we would assume that it applies only to the buyer because he is the main benefactor in a sale. Number two, the law of overcharging applies both to regular people and to merchants. Rabbi Yehuda holds it does not apply to merchants. The Gemara explains his opinion. The first explanation is Rav Nachman Amar Rav. It refers to a tagor safsor, who sells what he buys immediately. If he undersold, he forgoes the difference because he knew the price, and undersold anyway because he needed the cash for another purchase. The second explanation is Rav Ashi. He explains it to mean even less than a sixth. A merchant, unlike a regular person, can demand a refund since he relies on this for his parnasa. The third law of the Mishnah is the one defrauded has the upper hand. He can demand a refund or void the sale. The Gemara discusses the author of the Mishnah in light of the Brisa on Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis. Rabbi Nassan only mentions the possibility of a refund, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in the Brisa mentions the seller as being the victim, and the Mishnah, on the other hand, mentions the buyer. Rabbah claims that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Nassan. He holds to amend his law in the Brisa to include either a refund or voiding the sale. Rabbah holds the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The Brisa explains the case the Mishnah left out. The next discussion concerns a machlokas if the seller stipulates that the sale is consummated only if the buyer has no claim of ona. Rav holds the buyer can claim ona in spite of the seller's stipulation. The Gemara suggests he follows the view of Rabbi Meir, who holds that if a husband stipulates he will not support his wife, he is married and the stipulation is void because he cannot stipulate against the Torah. Shmuel, on the other hand, holds he has no ona. He is like Rabbi Yehuda, who does not void the stipulation because she agreed to forego a monetary matter of their relationship. However, the Gemara rejects this comparison. Rav may hold like Rabbi Yehuda because the wife accepted this as a condition for their marriage. However, the buyer assumes the seller stipulated only in case he mistakenly charges more. However, if the seller or buyer specifies he is overcharging or underpaying, and the other parties agree, then even according to Rav, they are exempt. Shmuel, on the other hand, could hold like Rabbi Meir because the husband definitely uprooted a Torah obligation by stipulating not to provide for her. But he may not violate the laws of price fraud. Rav Anan clarifies Shmuel's opinion. Shmuel holds only if he said on the condition that you have no claim against me, because at the time of the stipulation it was not clear there would be price fraud. But if he said on the condition the transaction has no overcharge, if there is price fraud, the transaction is disqualified.